Maureen O'Hara thought her career was over. She had just slapped a studio boss. Everything was finished. Until John Wayne quietly stepped in. The sound of the slap echoed through the third-floor hallway of Republic Pictures. Sharp. Final. The kind of sound that ends careers. Maureen O'Hara stood in the doorway of producer Herbert Yates's office, her right hand still trembling from the impact, her face pale with the immediate understanding of what she had just done. Behind her, Yates clutched his reddening cheek, his expression transitioning from shock to cold fury. "You're finished in this town," he said, his voice low and venomous. "I'll make sure of it. Every studio. Every producer. They'll all know what you did." Maureen didn't respond. Couldn't. She turned and walked into the hallway, her heels clicking against the polished checkerboard floor, the crumpled contract still clutched in her left hand. She made it maybe 10 steps before her legs began to shake. That's when she saw him. John Wayne stood at the far end of the hallway, script pages in one hand, coffee cup in the other. He'd been walking back from the commissary to stage 4 where they were filming The Quiet Man. He'd heard the slap. Everyone on the third floor had heard it. Their eyes met. Wayne set down his coffee cup on a nearby desk without looking away from her face. He walked toward her with that distinctive gait. Unhurried but purposeful, the walk of a man who had made a decision and would see it through. "Maureen," he said quietly when he reached her. "What happened?" She opened her mouth to answer but no words came. She held up the crumpled contract instead. Wayne took it gently, smoothing the pages with careful fingers, his eyes scanning the typed text. His jaw tightened. He looked past her toward Yates's office door. "Wait here," Wayne said. Not a request. A statement. "Duke, don't." Maureen started, but he was already moving past her, walking toward that office with the same measured stride. Wayne didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. To understand what happened in the next 5 minutes, you need to understand what happened 3 weeks earlier. It was October 1951. John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara were in Ireland filming The Quiet Man under John Ford's direction. They'd worked together before, Rio Grande the previous year, and had developed the kind of professional chemistry that made directors want to cast them together repeatedly. But more than that, they'd become friends. Real friends. The kind where you don't have to perform or pretend. Where silence is comfortable and honesty is expected. One evening after a long day of shooting, they sat in the courtyard of their hotel in Tsung, drinking Irish whiskey and watching the rain. Maureen was quiet, unusual for her, Wayne noticed. She stared at her glass, turning it slowly in her hands. "Something on your mind?" Wayne asked. Maureen hesitated, then spoke. "When we get back to Hollywood, Yates wants to renegotiate my contract. He's been hinting at it. Says the studio has concerns about my marketability." Wayne frowned. "You're one of the biggest stars they have. I'm also one of the few who says no." She looked at him. "I turned down 3 films last year because the scripts were garbage. Yates didn't like that." "A contract is a contract, Maureen. They can't just. They can do whatever they want." She interrupted, her voice bitter. "I'm a woman in this business, Duke. Different rules apply. You know that." Wayne was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that Maureen would remember for the rest of her life. "If they try to push you around, you push back. And if they push harder—" He paused, meeting her eyes. "You don't face them alone. You understand?" She nodded, not fully understanding what he meant. Now, 3 weeks later, standing in that Republic Pictures hallway with a crumpled contract in her hands and the memory of slapping Herbert Yates still fresh, she understood perfectly. Wayne entered Yates's office and closed the door behind him. Maureen couldn't hear what was said. The door was too thick, the hallway too long. But she could see through the frosted glass panel. Wayne's silhouette standing perfectly still while Yates's shadow moved aggressively, gesturing, clearly shouting. Wayne didn't move. Didn't gesture back. Just stood there like a monument, while the producer raged. The confrontation lasted exactly 4 minutes. When Wayne emerged, his face was expressionless. He walked back to Maureen, handed her the contract, now torn completely in half, and said 3 words. "You're done here." Maureen's heart sank. So it was over. Wayne had tried to intervene and failed, and now... "I mean done with Republic," Wayne clarified, seeing her expression. "Yates just released you from your contract. Effective immediately. No penalties. Clean break." Maureen stared at him. "How did you? What did you?" "I explained some things to him," Wayne said simply. "About how contracts work. About respect. About what happens when you treat people like property instead of professionals." "Duke, what did you give up?" Maureen's voice was sharp with sudden understanding. "What did you promise him?" Wayne looked away, uncomfortable. "It doesn't matter." "Tell me." He sighed. 2 pictures. Republic gets me for 2 more pictures at my old rate. Below market. I was going to renegotiate next month, but... He shrugged. This was more important. Maureen felt tears burning in her eyes. "You sacrificed your own contract renegotiation. For me. It's just money, Maureen. It's not just money. It's years of your career. It's done," Wayne said, his voice firm but not unkind. "What you did in there took courage. Standing up to a man who holds your career in his hands? That's not easy. But you shouldn't have to do it alone. Nobody should. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding." They walked together down that hallway and out of Republic Pictures. Maureen never set foot in the building again. Wayne would honor his commitment. 2 films, both westerns he wouldn't have chosen otherwise, both at rates well below what he could have commanded elsewhere. But something had shifted that day. Something larger than contracts or studio politics. Word spread through Hollywood the way it always does, through makeup artists and assistant directors, through lunch conversations at the commissary and late-night phone calls between agents. John Wayne had gone to bat for Maureen O'Hara. Had sacrificed his own leverage to protect hers. Other actors noticed. Other actresses especially. Within 6 months, Maureen signed with a different studio, 20th Century Fox, at nearly double her previous salary. The contract included script approval and choice of director for at least 1 film per year. Terms that would have been unthinkable under Yates. And the clause that protected her? The precedent that allowed those negotiations? It came directly from what Wayne had demanded in that office, that an actor's no had to mean something, that contracts were agreements between equals, not ownership papers. Away from the cameras, Wayne made a choice no one expected. 6 years later, in 1957, Maureen was having lunch with director John Ford when he mentioned, almost casually, "You know Duke never told you the whole story about that day at Republic." Maureen looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Ford lit his pipe, taking his time. "Yates didn't just agree to release you because Duke offered him 2 pictures. Yates is a businessman. He doesn't make deals out of sentiment." "Then why?" "Because Duke told him that if he didn't tear up your contract, Duke would walk away from Republic entirely. No more pictures. Ever. And he'd make sure every other major star knew why." Ford paused. "Duke was Republic's biggest draw. Losing him would have bankrupted the studio. Yates knew it. Duke knew it. So Yates had 2 choices, lose his pride or lose his studio." Maureen sat very still. He risked everything. His entire relationship with Republic. All his future films there. He risked more than that. Ford said quietly. He risked his reputation as someone who played ball with the studio system. In this town, that kind of defiance can get you blacklisted. But Duke didn't care. He saw something wrong and he fixed it. That's who he is. Maureen had known Wayne was generous. Had known he was loyal. But this level of sacrifice, putting his entire career on the line for a principal, for another actor's dignity, that was something else entirely. She found Wayne that same afternoon on the set of Legend of the Lost. He was between takes, sitting in his canvas chair, reading a script. "Ford told me," Maureen said without preamble. "About what you really did. About the ultimatum." Wayne looked up, his expression carefully neutral. "Ford talks too much." "Why didn't you tell me? All these years, you let me think it was just 2 pictures. You let me believe." "Because it doesn't matter," Wayne interrupted gently. "What matters is you're free. You're working on your terms. That's all I cared about." "It matters to me," Maureen said, her voice thick. "You could have been blacklisted. You could have lost everything." "I could have," Wayne agreed. "But I didn't. And you want to know why?" He stood up, his full height imposing but his expression soft. "Because bullies rely on silence. They rely on people being too scared to speak up, too isolated to fight back. The moment you show them you're willing to burn it all down rather than submit, they fold. Every time." He picked up a small object from his chair's armrest, a silver St. Christopher medal on a chain. He'd been carrying it since his mother gave it to him decades ago. "My mother told me something when I was young," Wayne said, turning the medal over in his fingers. "She said a man's character isn't measured by what he does when people are watching. It's measured by what he does when no one will ever know. When there's no reward. No recognition." He looked at Maureen. "I didn't do what I did for recognition. I did it because it was right." He held out the medal. "I want you to have this." Maureen's eyes widened. "Duke, I can't. Your mother would have wanted someone like you to carry it," Wayne said firmly. "Someone who stands up. Who fights back. Who doesn't let the bastards win." He pressed it into her hand, closing her fingers around it. "Keep it. Remember what it cost. And when someone else needs help, when you see injustice and you have the power to stop it, you step in. Just like you did when you slapped Yates. Just like I did when I walked into that office." Maureen clutched the medal, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," Wayne said. "Pass it on." But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. Maureen O'Hara carried that St. Christopher medal for the next 58 years. She wore it during every major film she made. During her Academy Honorary Award acceptance in 2014, at age 94, she held it up briefly and said simply, "For Duke, who taught me that courage isn't loud." But the medal was just a symbol. The real legacy was what Maureen did with the lesson Wayne taught her. In 1962, a young actress named Rita Moreno was being pressured by a producer to accept a contract that would have essentially locked her into stereotype roles for 5 years. Moreno was terrified. She was Puerto Rican in an industry that barely acknowledged Latino talent, and saying no could mean the end of her career before it really started. Maureen heard about it through mutual friends. She called Moreno, invited her to lunch, and told her the story of that day at Republic Pictures. All of it. The slap. Wayne's intervention. The ultimatum. The medal. "You have power," Maureen told her. "More than you know. But you have to be willing to use it. And when you use it, others will stand with you. That's what Duke taught me." Rita Moreno turned down the contract. She struggled for 2 years. Then she won an Oscar for West Side Story on her own terms. The pattern repeated. Maureen mentored dozens of actresses over the decades. Each one learned the same lesson: dignity is not negotiable. And courage is contagious. When John Wayne died in 1979, Maureen spoke at a private memorial. She held up the St. Christopher medal and told the story publicly for the first time. The room was silent. Then someone started applauding. Then everyone. "He didn't save my career that day," Maureen said, her voice steady. "He taught me how to save myself. And then he gave me the tools to help others do the same." Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The medal now rests in the Smithsonian, donated by Maureen's family after her death in 2015. The placard beside it reads simply, "Carried by Maureen O'Hara. Given by John Wayne. October 1951. A reminder that honor is not loud. In that Republic Pictures hallway, Wayne didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply showed up. He stood between a friend and injustice. He paid the price quietly. That's not mythology. That's character.